Hi, my name is Luba Elliott, and I'm an artist, curator, and researcher specializing in artificial intelligence in the creative fields. In this short video, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the technology and give you some examples of how artists and creatives are using it in their own practice so that you can be inspired and know about the potential for your own creative work. But first of all, what is AI? Artificial intelligence is a technology that is all around us, and it powers a lot of our gadgets and online systems and websites that we frequently access. And some examples can include personal assistants such as Alexa that are able to recognize your voice and then search through data and provide you with a response. Or they might include facial recognition systems that you might have in the passport gates at the airport that scan your face and then figure out if it matches the image in your photograph. Or there are various self-driving cars under development that have the goal of creating machines that are able to drive around without any human intervention. So they're able to recognize their surroundings and move without a driver. So these are just some real-world examples of how AI is currently being used and developed. And what about the creative and artistic field? Well, in this field, I'd like to give you some examples from the visual and the text-based side, as well as some of the interesting conceptual and critical works that reflect on the technology and its place in the artistic world and in our society. So, first of all, I would say that the main interest and creative developments in this field in recent years started about 3 years ago when Deep Dream came out of a Google office. And Deep Dream is basically a technology that emphasizes the features in an image. So you might have a photograph of a person, and then you have this technology that tries to find pagodas or puppies or slugs in a human face, and then it conjures these crazy animal images that are often also multicolored, and you have like a very aesthetically pleasing image. So this came out about 3 years ago, and artists such as Memo Acton and Mike Tyker, also a creator of this technology, started playing around with this and creating the work, because it was one of these examples when you showed an image to the computer and it came up with something that is obviously very visually creative and something you as a human might not come up with by yourself. And then following that, there was a technology called style transfer developed in Tübingen, and that was basically about changing a photograph, so its content, into a different style, such as a surrealist image or impressionist, expressionist, and so on. So it was also popularized by this app called Prisma, which you might remember and maybe considered like a pastiche or a filter, but in this case, each image is generated from scratch. And there are artists such as Jean Kogan and Sophie Crespo who have played around with this technology, sometimes using an existing artwork like the Mona Lisa and changing that into different styles, also kind of broadening the notion of what style is, and sometimes including Google Maps or some astronomical images as a potential for the style. And yeah, I would say that the art world has sometimes reacted to these projects quite skeptically, because it was almost like an easy way to create some sort of visual art that looked, I guess, artistic to somebody who is not so familiar with current practices. But with the development of new technologies, the interest has kind of moved on, and nowadays what is quite popular is something that is called a GAN, or a Generative Adversarial Network. And a lot of the work done with this technology can be quite realistic at times, or sometimes shows figures or images that might have somewhat misplaced kind of body parts or facial features. And I think I have an image I can show you by an artist called Myra Clingerman, who is one of the most prolific people in this space. And yeah, so here you can see some images at the bottom of the screen. And these were kind of generated from looking at hundreds of thousands of photographs of the human body. And then kind of the machine learned about them and then created more images in this style, which the artist, in this case Myra Clingerman, then kind of curated and kind of worked with the technology again to tweak some parameters and then maybe kind of create more images. And I think, yeah, in this case also Myra Clingerman provides an example of somebody who is able to really own one part of the process and kind of to really develop and learn about the technology as a craft, kind of creating work with it, and then constantly improving his practice and really differentiating himself from other artists who might just use an off-the-shelf kind of algorithm and then create work that then becomes very similar to the other work that is currently out there. And at this point, I'd like to move on to some of the text-based work that has been done. And a lot of this work uses recurrent neural networks as an algorithm, and it functions kind of, yeah, it functions again similarly. So there is a lot of data that the machine learns from, and then it generates kind of new data similar to that. And some of the recent artistic experiments over the past few years have been done by Oscar Sharp and Ross Goodwin, and include the work Sunspring, which is a short sci-fi film that was where the plot and the text that the characters spoke and even the set instructions were all generated by an AI that was trained on sci-fi films from the 1970s and 80s. And yeah, you should definitely watch it at some point, and you will see that it's quite a fun and very obviously experimental film, because yeah, a lot of the utterances or the kind of the plot line don't make so much sense in a way, and that is because our current text generation capabilities don't always make it easy to be able to generate a lot of text that can flow. And And yeah, so this is one text-based example. So hopefully these examples from the visual and the text side have given you some idea of what you can actually do if you just kind of generate text or image based on data sets of images or plays or other data that you may want to work with. And now I wanted to give you just a few more examples that think more about how you can use this technology a bit more critically. And one of these is The Fall of the House of Usher by Anna Riddler. And she is an artist who makes her own data sets. So she really thinks about owning kind of another part of the process. So the data and figuring out what you can actually give the algorithm to learn from, because that ultimately influences very much the final output. And so she made 300 drawings based on a film called Fall of the House of Usher from 1929, and then from the generated images she actually learned a lot about her own practice, that there are certain facial features that she draws very similarly, and the AI picked up on that and kind of generated images with her own mistakes. Or to give you another example of an artist who kind of thinks critically, is that could be Adam Harvey, who looks at the facial recognition technologies and how you can maybe try to circumvent them. So he has a project called CV Dazzle that is about figuring out what you can actually do to the image of a human face to make it not appear as a face to some of these systems. And he's got a few projects where if you wear your hair a certain way, if you have like a fringe or something blocking part of your nose or eye, then that could stop your face from being recognized. Or if you had a certain pattern on your cheeks, like a triangle sticker that was kind of big enough, then that could also stop some of these systems from working. And so I think this example also shows that this technology ultimately provides a lot of opportunities also for you to think about critically and the impact it has on societies. So now just some closing thoughts. So I hope these have provided you with some ideas of how ultimately you can use this technology as a machine creative partner who might be able to come up with very different ideas and interpretations of images than you can yourself. And ultimately, it's also a creative assistant because it can generate a lot of images for you that then you can kind of curate or kind of edit by tweaking the algorithm and then getting it to generate you some new images. And ultimately, because of the perspective the machine provides, sometimes it might come up with some crazy ideas like a disjointed plot in the Sunspring film I mentioned. And this, as a human, provides you food for thought that you can then change into kind of more developed or more critical works that either think about the technology or use the technology kind of as a background element in a broader artistic vision, because this is ultimately where this field is moving, right? It's no longer just enough to use the technology. You have to either own it or come up with a truly compelling artistic vision and show how this how the technology you choose is the right tool for it. And So I hope this has been useful and has encouraged you to try and play around with this technology and experiment with it in your own creative field. So thank you.